podcast. We are your hosts. I am TJ Kern. That is Blake Hartsfield. Blake, we had Ted on last time. We talked a couple weeks ago. The Red Raiders have played some really, really good basketball. And so let's talk about it here. We finished the regular season 15-5, Big 12 play, 24-7 overall. What are your thoughts here as we wrap up the season?
TJ, hats off to Grant McCasland and his staff and his team on what they were able to accomplish this year. Their growth on the defensive end of the floor has been phenomenal. I remember when they lost to UCF to start off Big 12 play, I came on here and said, look, this is going to be a long season. McCasland said the same in his press conference after that game, that they couldn't guard on the perimeter. They couldn't keep people from getting into the lane. They gave up 87 in that game against UCF at home. And McCasland called him out and said it was unacceptable. And since then, TJ, they have played like a true national championship contender. They are one of, I think, 8 teams now at the end of the regular season that fit the KenPom profile of a national champion. That's a top 30 defensive efficiency and a top 20 offensive efficiency. And they've just been outstanding, TJ. They've been road warriors. They have 7 quad 1 wins on the road, which is almost unprecedented in the net era of college basketball. I think that we'll get into the bracketology, here in a little while. I think they should be a 2 seed, but tip your hat. I mean, they won at Kansas, second time in program history they've ever done that. The only other time was the 2019 season, which we got to overtime of the national championship, and I've made a lot of comparisons to that group with this year's team. They won at Houston, which is, in my opinion, one of the 2 best wins in college basketball this year, depending on how you view the Alabama win this past weekend at Auburn compared to that. But, they've won at BYU, who's been on a roll here recently. They beat Arizona. They should have beaten Iowa State. They've just been outstanding since that first conference game, and you got to give them a lot of credit.
Yeah, it's been a great season all the way around. A lot of awards to go around this time of year, and especially here in the 806.
Yeah. You want to get into those? You want me to go through them?
Yeah, well, big man JT Toppin is, let's start there. Big 12 player of the year and newcomer of the year.
100% deserved, TJ. I don't know if it was unanimous outside of McCasland. He's not allowed to vote for his own guys, but I think Kelvin Sampson said it best when he was asked who he voted for. He said, JT Toppin, I love the way that kid plays. He's tough as hell. He's been the best player in the league this year. And I don't think you could say it any better than that. I mean, JT has you've seen the growth, right, as the year has gone on. He's had, I think, a 40-point game, a couple of 30-point games. And he's just been unguardable. I remember the game after Colorado, our last home game. Their coach went in the press conference and he said something to the effect of, we in this business, you don't like to have to do this very often, but sometimes you just got to tip your hat to the opponent. Texas Tech is really, really good. And tonight, we pride ourselves on defense. And Toppin pretty much had his way with us down low against multiple defenders, and we just couldn't stop that kid. So all the credit in the world to JT Toppin. He has been outstanding, probably the best transfer Tech has ever gotten over, and that's high praise, over guys like Bryson Williams, Matt Mooney, just to name a couple, Tariq Owens, who were all really, really impactful. But it's going to be really fun to see where Toppin and D5 and McMillan can take this team, in the Big 12 tournament this week and then next week in the Big Dance.
Well, speaking of my guy Chance and your guy D5, both got all Big 12 honors. On the first team, of course, we had JT Toppin and D5. And then on the second team, my guy Chance McMillan.
All deserved, TJ. And I believe Elijah Hawkins was an honorable mention. Yeah, I don't want to leave him out. I don't think he was on the first, second, or third team, which, frankly, I think he probably should have been on the third team, but I believe he was an honorable mention. Credit to all the way around. I mean, this group, they're unselfish, TJ. They play for one another. They share the ball. They're so much fun to watch. They just play such a beautiful brand of basketball. And I think a lot of that needs to be, credit to McCasland, but then also a lot of credit to Jeff Linder and this offense. They run great modern sets, which has been just such a breath of fresh air compared to what, not that I'm complaining about the elite defenses that we had under Beard and Adams, but sometimes the offensive end of the floor is a little bit of a struggle. And when I say a little bit, a lot of bit of a struggle. They share the ball moves, everybody gets open looks, and they play really a classic style, TJ. They play inside out, right? They hammer top in on pick and rolls. They throw it top and down low and let them use that left hand hook. And then when teams inevitably say, okay, we've had enough of this, and they run the double or they shade the defender over, he swings it, or he does just a kick out, and then the ball swings faster than the defense can rotate, and you get an open three, and bang, we go the other direction. So I'm just so impressed with how this team plays and just the style that they've adopted.
It's been a lot of fun and definitely a breath of fresh air. My favorite team since we started covering this thing was Mark Adams' first year with Bryson Williams, Adonis Arms, that group that ran into Paolo Banchero and company, and we thought they had the Final Four type team. And see, this team, though, with the amount of shot making that we have, the scrappiness on defense, the ability to score down low, score out high, score in the mid post, like it's a true 3-level offense.
Yeah, TJ. I mean, you just start looking through some of the numbers that they put up in Big 12 play. 83 in a loss to UCF, 93 on the road at Utah, 72 on the road at BYU, 84 against a very good defensive Iowa State team. 82 against Houston on the road. Who scores 82 on Houston in regulation? I mean, my goodness.
Without JT Toppin.
Without JT Toppin. 73 against Baylor at home. 111 against Arizona State. Now, that did go to double overtime, but 111. 93 in regulation at Oklahoma State. 91 in regulation at home in Colorado. And TJ, as impressive as the win at Houston was, and again, I do think that is the best win in college basketball. I got to point out this win in Lawrence, just because that place is so hard. But 78 on the road in Lawrence. I mean, with basically nothing from the free throw line, because anybody who watched that game knows kind of what happened there in the second half, where they put Kansas in the bonus with 6 minutes into the half, and Tech didn't shoot any free throws the entire second half, but until Kansas was forced to foul at the end of the game. But 78 on the road in Lawrence. I mean, the offensive efficiency of this team is through the roof.
And it's been a lot of fun to watch. And let's not forget we were doing the awards, man. My guy, Christian Anderson, also on the all-freshman team.
He's not a freshman. Not a freshman anymore, TJ. He hadn't been a freshman all year. He doesn't play like a freshman. He didn't quite get – I think he was probably the runner-up on the voting for freshman of the year in the conference. And the only reason he didn't get that is because Edgecombe from Baylor has just been so good. And credit to that kid. He had a very deserving season. Not that Christian Anderson didn't deserve it, because he did. But, the kid – plays well beyond his years, TJ. He can knock down shots from the outside. He can get to the rim. He can create for others. But again, kind of as a microcosm of what this team's growth has been, his growth on the defensive end and his willingness to accept coaching from Coach McCaslin to get better. And Anderson said it himself in one of the press conferences. He said, I've never been asked to play defense. I've always been the best player on my team. It's never been something I had to prioritize. But you saw it throughout the year. I think he had a big steal late in the game at home. I think against Arizona, that was really important to closing that game out. And there's several other moments throughout the year where he just came up and a tip ball here or a deflection there, and he was just really good. TJ, his growth and all the credit in the world to him.
Let's turn the page, and it is championship week, Blake. And the Red Raiders have secured the double bye in the new Big 12, which means you're off for 2 days and a straight shot into the quarterfinals. I want to throw this at you. You don't know it's coming. It's a curveball. Do we even care what happens in Kansas City? Because personally, I would almost rather just not even exert the energy to try to win in Kansas City and just get ready for next week.
So that's a good question, TJ. I think it matters for your first game, and that's it, right? I think the quarterfinal game matters for a couple of reasons. One, I don't particularly want to just mail it in and not have played a game for almost 2 full weeks before you go into March next week on Thursday or Friday when you start. So here's my take on that, TJ. I think you play on Thursday and you play your normal rotations and you try to win, go all out and try to win that game, whether it's against Baylor or the winner of this game going on right now, Arizona State and Kansas State. It looks like K-State's up by 10 currently with 6 minutes or 7 minutes to go in that game. So it's looking likely that it's going to be K-State against Baylor, so you get the winner of them. I think you need to win that game just to kind of stay in rhythm and not take too much of a break. But then, to me, more importantly, I think if you win that game, you lock up a 3 seed, right? And we're going to get into the bracketology, but I think being on the 3 line is so important to avoid being on the 4 line and then, having to deal with a 4 or 5 matchup in the second round. But then more importantly than that, right, you got to deal with a 1 seed in the Sweet 16 potentially. So let's win the first game. And then in the semifinal, I think that's where you kind of default to your coaching staff and trust McCasland on his feel for this group if it's worth
They're
going
going to
for
play
it.
to win.
I don't know, TJ. We'll see. I mean, I hear you, and I my gut tells me McCasland is going to go for it. I'm kind of with you in that while it would be fun to win the Big 12 tournament, I care a lot more about going deep next week. So we'll see. But I think that the first game at a minimum is really important.
Understood there. And speaking of the bracketology, let's go ahead and get into that. All the I think Lenardi has us right now on the 3 line or the 2
No,
line.
He's got us on the 2 line.
Yeah, something like that. So, I mean, we could be as high as a 2 or all the way down to a 4, somewhere in between. You're my bracketologist. Where do we want to be? Where do we want to be playing our games?
So there's 2 angles to this, and you kind of touched on both the seed and then the location of the seed. So they can be the highest they can get is they could get the number 8 overall seed in the tournament, which would be the last 2. I think that the top 7 seeds are kind of written in stone at this point, and that's going to be Alabama, Auburn, Florida from the SEC, Duke from the ACC, and then Tennessee and Michigan State will be the first 2 twos. I'm sorry, the second and third 2s. The fourth 2 is up for grabs. You've got Tech in the mix. You've got St. John's in the mix, and then probably Kentucky, and maybe A&M could get back into that conversation as well if they can make a deep run in the SEC tournament. But to your point, and just kind of what I just talked about with the Big 12 tournament, if you win that game, there's no way you're getting less than a 3. You're not going to end up on the 4 line. So win that game, you get on the 3 line. I don't know that there is a huge difference in getting the last 2 and the 3, other than the fact that it would be really cool to get the 2 because no Tech team in history has ever been seeded higher than 3rd. We got back-to-back 3s under Chris Beard. We were a 3 under Mark Adams in that year that you referenced earlier. The Tony Battie team in the 90s that lost to Allen Iverson and Georgetown was a 3 seed. So we've never been on the 2 line. So that would be a really cool accomplishment for McCasland in this group. But to me, there's not a huge difference in the 2 and the 3. You're playing the other, whoever. More than likely, I think they're either going to be the last 2 or the first 3. So if the seeding is seeded the way that you would expect, you're playing St. John's if that's who you're competing with, and that's what most of the bracketologists has in the Sweet 16. So let's just get on the 3 line, and then anything from there is gravy. If you're at the top of the 3 line and you're ahead of A&M, and this is the kicker, is you've got to be a higher overall seed than A&M, then you would get to play in Wichita, which would be the closest site to Lubbock and more importantly to Dallas. The drive from Dallas to Wichita, I think, is 5.5 hours. So it's the same distance that it would take to drive to Lubbock. So, if you could get Wichita, that you probably have more fans there than anywhere else if you get shipped off to the Northwest or somewhere like that. But let's get the 3 and see what happens.
Well, that sounds like a plan to me. And before we get out of here, man, we did got a little football as spring practice opens up. I know they're practicing, but our guy Baron Morton will be sitting out this spring. How much do you think the reps for Will Hammond and company will get in this experience this spring will go?
TJ, I think it's blessing in disguise. Not that I don't want Baron Morton out there with all the new talent coming in. I do, but I think, and obviously I'm a little biased. Anybody who's listened to this pod knows that I'm a big Baron Morton defender and driver of his train, so to speak, conductor. But While it'd be great to have Barron out there, letting Will Hammond get all the first team reps this spring is going to pay dividends. Not potentially next season. If you have an injury to Barron Morton, he's going to be that much more ready to go and step in and not have a gap in your quarterback play. But more importantly, for the season after Barron Morton is not here, right? And when it's quote unquote Will Hammond's team coming into spring. So I think that's great for Will Hammond. TJ, I don't know if you've seen any pictures from practice. Will Hammond looks like he's added about 10 pounds of muscle. He looks noticeably bigger, which is encouraging, right? In the game against TCU, where you got to really see him last year, and then in the bowl game, he did look a little thin. So it looks like they've gotten him in the weight room, and he's putting on a little bit of muscle, which is great. But I don't think, and you and I both agree, Joey McGuire is not on the hot seat, right? He's established here. He's been great his first 3 years. That being said, I think that there's an expectation amongst the fan base, and more importantly, there's an expectation from Cody Campbell that this year's team, delivers. Right? He didn't write all those checks this winter in the transfer portal to get the number one transfer portal class and to bring in all this talent to go 7-5. So, I think that there is an expectation of they better be in Arlington next year playing for a Big 12 championship.
I definitely agree with that. It's one of those things where you beat both of the teams last year. You had a chance to get there and so close. And
you blew
Cody Campbell delivered, and we said we wouldn't be drinking any off-season Kool-Aid, Blake, but here we are yet again, full cup of Kool-Aid. So we'll get into
how can you not?
more of that too.
I mean, we both said it at the end of the regular season, but then that transfer portal. I mean, how can you not drink the Kool-Aid with, blue chip transfer
after the other? It was just like another name and another guy, and it's like
blue
the
chip,
Oprah
blue
meme.
chip.
Yeah, it was like the Oprah meme. You get a blue chip. You get a blue chip. Oh no, Tech gets all the blue chips.
Yeah, It's, as I saw from one Florida State insider, and Florida State's a power player in college football, right? They're probably a top 15, quote unquote, all time program. They lost a recruit. I believe it was the Romello Height from Georgia Tech, the defensive end or edge, whatever you want to call him. He kind of plays with
Twitter was pretty salty too.
They were, well, because why? Because he entered the portal and then an hour and a half later he committed to Tech. They were a little salty about that one, but what I'm referencing was one of the Florida State insiders. I think they were interested in this edge, Romello Height, who was one of the blue chip recruits that Tech got, and Florida State lost, and one of their fans asked him, well, how did we lose him to Texas Tech? And we didn't. He said we didn't lose him to Texas Tech. We lost him to Money University. So Cody Campbell had a reputation, I guess, that was around a lot of the power players in college football, that we were just slinging a lot of money. And look, it's fun to be on the right side of that for a change. The SEC and some of those great programs have been notorious for cheating for years when it was illegal to cheat. And now that it's legal and anybody can pay what they can pay, it's fun to see one of the quote unquote smaller schools in Tech push back a little bit against the college football cable that has had a monopoly on getting away with cheating for the last 50 years of college football. So,
no doubt about it, Blake. Happy championship week to you, my friend. We will see how the Red Raiders fare this week. We'll see if they play to win. We'll see what happens there. If they get that first win, my prediction is they will play it out and try to win the tournament, even though it may be the smart thing to kind of pull off the reins a little bit.
I agree with you. So with that being said, do you think they win the Big 12 tournament or no?
I'm going to say no, but I'm hopeful it's a good no.
Okay.
So I would love for them to win it. I would love for them to win it, but I don't want them to exert so much energy this week that they've got nothing left for next week.
So I'm not worried about the energy piece of it, TJ. If you told me, and obviously you can't do this until the games are over, but if you could tell me that they could go for it and nobody's going to get hurt, then I'm all for it. Because I don't think they're going to have an energy issue because you finish on Saturday and then you get Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and the earliest that you're playing again is Thursday. So you got plenty of time to recover from the 3 games in 3 days. But to me, it's all about that injury. And TJ, I think if let's call a spade here. I think a lot of it on what McCasland's going to do is how physical is the game on Thursday night, right? Is it a hard fought, brutal physical contest against the Baylor or K State, or is it a situation where with 9 minutes to go in that game, you're up by 15, and it's you're not having to exert near the amount of energy you would in a tie ball game. So that might play a role in this too. It also could matter of who do you play in the semifinal, right? Is it Kansas that upsets Arizona? Is it Arizona? Is it somebody who is playing tonight in the last game that upsets Kansas and then upsets I mean, who knows? So there's just so many factors, but I tend to lean and agree with you that if they win on Thursday, that just knowing the Castlan's DNA and knowing the DNA of this team, that they're gonna want to go for it. I just pray that nobody gets hurt.
You heard it here on the Nation's official podcast with TJ and Blake. We are praying to the basketball gods for no injuries, healthy players this week, and we'll see what happens in the Big 12 tournament. We'll be back next week to see what happens and talk about it here on the Nation's official podcast. Blake, how do we always get out of here, bud?
Recommend.
Recco. We'll talk to you guys soon.